Welcome back. When we went to our break, we were talking about the flower sector. I want now to relate the flower sector with the horticultural sector. They are closely related.
Kazi ukianza kufanya kilimo ile iko katika standard kubwa, huwezi fanya peke yako. Lazima uwe na watu wa kufanya labor na ukiwalipa.
A study has been done that looks at the domestic market on horticulture. And in Nairobi alone, can somebody guess the number? Is bigger than what we do in the export business. It's worth about 200 billion shillings. That's Nairobi alone. Now when you build it further to look at the national level of the value of horticulture business, it goes to 700 billion.
Maybe Patrice, tell us a little bit about the horticultural sector and how can the Kenyan farmers get new markets for their produce?
Thank you. The horticulture sector is, as I had mentioned earlier, it's evolving, it's growing. Last year I had mentioned that we brought in 153 billion Kenya shillings in terms of revenue. That's from foreign exchange. And for the Kenyan farmers to get into horticulture, it's not difficult. Though there are standards which you have to implement for you to get into the export horticulture sector. The standards are determined by our main market, which is the EU. We have various standards. We have regulations also from the EU, which we use to regulate ourselves. Because if we don't comply to these standards and the regulations, then we are not able to export French beans, avocados, mangoes, or anything to the EU.
Okay. Let me just bring Emmanuel on that note about regulations. Emmanuel, from root to food, do you think the regulations from the EU especially are easy for, let's say, small-scale farmers? Because majority of our farmers are small-scale farmers. Do you think they can be able to meet those regulations and still make money from the horticultural sector?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Thank you for that. And just speaking from where Patrice has left, when you're targeting the export market, then you have no choice but to comply with the EU regulations. And the EU regulations are not just there because people think sometimes they're just a barrier to trade. But the EU regulations are there to safeguard the health and safety of the EU citizens. And so farmers can comply. Farmers are able to be trained and they're able to reduce dependence on pesticide use because it's very clear, like these are the pesticides you can use, these are pesticides you cannot use, and these are the levels of residues that are allowed. But where we have concern as Roots to Food is that we are not seeing that also happening in the local market. We consume vegetables, we consume the same fruits, but we don't really have monitoring in local markets to ensure that Kenyans enjoy the same safety afforded for the European Union countries. And even recently we have seen the ambassador for EU to Kenya saying that Kenya should just adopt the same pesticide regulatory practices in the EU to Kenya to safeguard also the health of Kenya. So I think in terms of regulation, I think there is compliance because the people who are exporting contract these farmers, they train them, and but we want to also see that happening for our own food because we can't take care of our neighbors if we can't take care of ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Let me bring Anna just a minute and then I come back to you. Anna, he has talked about safety, and as you've seen, the EU is very keen and very strict on the safety of food or anything that we export to the EU. But in the recent past, we've seen us as Kenyans, we've seen stories in the media whereby we've been consuming a lot of contaminated foodstuffs. Do you think as a country we are serious about the safety of our own consumers?
No, we are not serious because even it starts from the village, because some farmers actually have a small portion where they grow their own food and another portion where they grow the food that they know they are going to export. They know what they are doing to their crop. They know they are going to spray this crop 2 days before exporting. So they'll do that knowing how much it's going to affect the person who is going to consume that produce. So we just know what we are doing. I don't know if it's ignorance or it's just, okay, the greed, the level of greed that is there for quick money is what is making people not be able to comply to the standards, which again comes back to us as a country, because we think maybe if it goes outside there, it's not going to affect us as a country. But now we are seeing that we are the ones who are also suffering. So I think strict regulations should be put there. Let it not just be that I should sell this crop. Because this crop this meat that I'm selling, this French meat that I'm selling, might end up in my relatives' table. You see, in that concept of you just selling a product, you end up hurting those poor who don't even deserve to be hurt. So it all falls on the regulatory bodies. They should be very strict. People should be on the ground. They should be scouting and helping farmers understand the repercussions of using banned pesticides.
As FPIC, do you also have organic farmers? And do these, if your members are, some of them are organic farmers, how is their export market?
We have a number of exporters who do organic products, but mostly it is avocados. It's not big on fruits and vegetables because it's quite difficult for you to produce fruits and vegetables organically for a commercial project.
Okay.
So we have a few who do avocado, which is organic. And in terms of the local market, as Emmanuel has said, there is interest in the local market actually. It's not just the export market. Remember, the reason why the export market is very compliant is because the customers on the other side, the EU citizens, are the ones who are demanding for safe food. So that pushes us to comply to what they want because we want to do business with them. So what we need to do as a country is now promote the culture of consuming safe food within our own citizens. That way we will now encourage them to demand for safe food, because what is happening, these things are demand driven, and for that regard we actually have a standard. It's KS 1758 part 1 and 2. Part 1 looks at the flower and ornamental sector, part 2 looks at the fruits and vegetable sector. Rolling out these standards, actually Kenya has no issue with regulations and laws. We have too many of them. Our main issue is implementation. Like this standard, the main issue is now rolling it out. Now we can't target, if we say that we target farmers only, it will do a case. But so long as the consumers are not willing to pay the extra coin for this well-produced food, it becomes in vain to the farmer. So it's a whole system that needs to be broken down and then built back up. So there are plans actually. Hopefully from 2020 we will have projects supporting and rolling out, and we actually depend so much on you guys, the media, because without you, you have a platform whereby you can communicate these things to the consumers, and that way everybody will now be consuming safe food. Because if you highlight the importance of these standards and communicate that there's this standard, you have programs like this platform whereby we can come and discuss about these things, then we start that conversation from somewhere, because it's not easy to just, we can now discuss, me and the three of us, we can sit down at a corner somewhere, we discuss and decide, okay, we are consuming bad food. But so long as the people out there don't know, we can be questioning, we can grow our own, but people need to know for it to make sense. And that is what is happening in the EU.
I'd like us to move to another very interesting topic on the donkey, the beast of burden. And in the recent past, the beast of burden has been facing extinction, especially from the slaughterhouses that have been being built across the country. And most of the farmers have been complaining on how they are losing the donkeys.
Punda wamepotea sana, na hata kwa mazingira yenye punda wanachinjiwa kuna harufu mbaya, na kwa wananchi si mzuri hiyo. Ni harufu mbaya kabisa, hata ungeweza kukaa hapo. Kama unakula lazima uende mbali.
The last census in this country, which was in 2009, indicated that there are only about 1.8 million donkeys. And specifically for Kitui, that there are 136,000 donkeys. 3/4 of these animals work on a daily basis. And they help their community, whether in earning income or in saving.
Nimepata mali mingi kutoka kwa punda, nimenunua shamba, nimenunua plots, nimesomesha watoto naye. Hivyo mi najua punda ni mali ambayo inaweza saidia binadamu.
Atamba, let me start with you. What is your take on this donkey slaughter and sale of skin, especially from China?
I think it's just unimaginable. And if you look at the stories we've just run, it's just unimaginable that we can go to that extent. The appetite of human beings for meat is really something that needs to be looked at, and and blood. Initially growing up, and all of us growing up, we used to have a relationship with the animals we keep at home. And there's increasing conflict and violence towards domestic animal that needs to be looked at. As the Root to Food, we don't have a position on this, but as my personal opinion on this is there's need to really look at the welfare of domestic animals, especially the donkey. Communities that keep the donkey, especially for fetching water, carrying luggages, moving homes, etc. They have a very strong connection with these animals. And when you see these things happening in these villages, people are traumatized. People have relationships with these donkeys. When they are born, they are named. And people celebrate in homes that, we have a new calf, or we have a new donkey, we have a new sheep. And this is not, something that, people can assume. We are just counting. It's not heads of livestock. In some homes, those donkeys are actually counted as members of those households. And and they are named like us. When you have a calf born during our times in the village, you discuss as a family and you give it a name, and you celebrate. And I don't know where this is going. I mean, we are not going to have a relationship with domestic animals as we used to have. So I think this is really something that needs to be looked at. Yeah.
Okay. Let me bring Hannah here. I saw you laughing. I don't know whether you either have a donkey at home or
I wish.
You have a relationship with a donkey, not in the not literally, but you grew up with donkeys around you. But I'll also want to ask you another question. Can you eat donkey meat?
Of course. Last time I told you, Philip, donkey meat is just like any other meat. But as Kenya, we are not ready for that market yet. We are not ready to do that, because I ask myself, China, it's more developed than Kenya. What makes us think they have all the technology they need to breed donkeys? Why do we think that we can do that, and them with all the need they have, they cannot do that? You see, so that we should also ask ourselves that question. And also, coming now back to Kenya, a donkey, let's say one donkey in a household, is like a kiosk. You see, take away that donkey, you take away a woman's helper. Like, that donkey is used to fetch firewood, to go to the market, to take produce to the market. So on average, a donkey in a household brings an income of around 800 to 1,200 shillings per day. That's a lot of money. You can't just get it from anywhere, you see. And the rate at which donkeys are being produced in Kenya, the growth rate is around 1%. And the rate at which they are being slaughtered is around 5%. In Kenya, we have around 4 slaughterhouses, you see. And in Tanzania, only 2. Then there are also rising cases of people stealing donkeys from neighboring countries and bringing it into Kenya. So on an average, around 1,200 being sold. So in Kenya, we can't make at least.
Okay. let me bring Patrice into this conversation. Patrice, you've heard from Hannah that the number of donkeys that we have in the country is a paltry 1%. Do you think these businesses that are being opened, or slaughterhouses, because they are businesses, do you think they will be sustainable?
I think they might not be sustainable because a few years ago, donkey meat was not meat to be eaten. And as he has said, it was a domestic animal, which we don't eat. So I think now that someone, or I don't know where people started consuming, I can't point my finger to that, when people started eating donkey meat. So I think when we decided that we can eat donkey meat, then we should have a drive of pushing people to have as many donkeys so that we have enough to help the households and also enough to be eaten.
Okay. Maybe as we wind up, let me ask you, the same question I asked Njoki, and I'll also ask Emmanuel. Can you eat donkey meat? And why? If yes, why? And if no, why?
I don't know if do I say I can or have eaten, because I think as we were in campus, I think we ate donkey meat from somewhere. So I think if we had a butchery which was specific, like we have a butchery for cows and goats, and then we have a separate one for pork, because of the religious issues. So if we had a butchery, a donkey meat butchery over there, then I think people would be interested. Also, I think if it was cheaper than beef or goat, people will still eat. I don't think, so long as people are not dying, I think it can be eaten. Okay. But we have to look at the numbers, of course, so that we don't deplete them.
Emmanuel, yes. What is your take? Can you eat donkey meat?
I can't eat any meat in the first place. So, yes, because I'm a vegan actually. Okay. But even when I used to eat meat, like I wouldn't touch donkey meat. And as I've said, this appetite for meat, generally meat is unsustainable to produce. We use 10 parts of input to get 1 part of output. So it's not sustainable to eat any meat, leave alone donkey meat. Okay. And I think we need to go back to our to our morals. We need to go back to our our cultures, our food cultures, and ask ourselves, what are we really exposing ourselves to and our children to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. From this panel alone, the donkey is not safe. 2 of them are saying they can consume the donkey meat. At least from Emmanuel, the donkeys are safe. And on that note, we'll take a short commercial break, but we'll be back shortly.